boy David and Rohan. We're about to bring a great episode of 49ers versus the Dallas Cowboys in the divisional round. All you know what's coming. All that hate from Dallas, all the hate from 49er fans to Dallas Cowboy fans is coming right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
All right, David, how you doing, my man? Welcome back to another episode of Clutch Gene Sports. We're here, and we're going to be talking some 49ers Cowboys.
Yeah, man. Hey, well, thanks for having me on, guys. It's been a week. I think that, we talked about it. I think for some of the people and whatever generation you are as a 49ers fan, it's kind of interesting how raised as a kid watching ball in the 90s, it was everything. And I think it just, even though that those years, there's a lot of in between, the fact that this rivalry is kind of being rekindled, especially in the playoffs lately, is just, it's exciting. And I think another thing that we forget about, I want to focus on this game now, but next year, Dallas is coming back to Santa Clara in the regular season. So It's always, when I grew up, the bragging rights, the next game was always that, and so it's an exciting time to be a Niners fan, and I think a Cowboys fan too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's going to be a fun matchup. Like you said, the history, rehashing it, just because it's been such a vital part of both franchises' history, right? You go back to the 70s, the 80s, when it kind of started with the Super Bowls, and now or with the NFC Championships going to the Super Bowls, and now we're coming back 2021, really rehashed it with the divisional round. You got a second consecutive year in the divisional round last year, wild card round this year, divisional round. It's going to be a nice, fun matchup, and the ticket sales clearly show it. I know you obviously have season tickets, but ticket sales clearly show it with the way that they're going.
It's insane. I mean, I try to help out fellow Niners fans, and I always promise to sell them the cheapest they found. And I sold them Saturday night, and knowing that, but boy, looking at those prices, could have got rich. But I'm glad Mike McGlynn, mutual follower, he's going to be in my seats. Always love seeing pictures from my seats in those games that I can't get to. So I hope you have a great time, man.
Yeah, that's good. We've got a fun show today because we've got three people, obviously Marco and I, the regular co-hosts, but we've got David as well. For those of you guys that don't know him, David, he writes sometimes for all 49ers SI, but also goes live with people like Jesse, goes live in general. So, David, we appreciate, obviously, you coming onto the pod.
Oh, of course.
So, bro, I'm over here working on like some McDonald's internet right now for some reason. Probably would have better internet right now, probably like at Starbucks or something. But hey, bro, I'm from California, all right, where the bullies get bullied. I don't know about Micah Parsons or whatever, but
he's from Harrisburg. Apparently, that's what they happen here there too.
The last time I checked, Brandon Ayuk was also from California, where he bullied the bully. Because that's what Micah Parsons reminded me of. But let's go straight into the game. Like, obviously, there's a lot of people out there who think each other's strength of schedule is a big reason of success. A lot of 49er fans out there are like, oh, well, Dallas hasn't played anyone good. Dallas is saying the same shit. Like, oh, they haven't played anyone good. Is that true, like, in your guys' perspective, or is it more so like whoever?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for me, it's like We tweeted out a couple weeks ago. It's true. Like, I think the 49ers strength of schedule at the beginning of the year said, hey, this schedule is going to be incredibly difficult based on, you're playing the AFC West or you're playing the however, what's happening, if you look at the draft order, the 2023 draft, the 49ers have all teams out. They are the lowest strength of schedule. Like, they had and so that can be true. And though, that's where something like DVOA, a metric that is no metric is perfect, but what DVOA strives to do is tries to even it out regardless of performance and who you are, and see, like, even adjusted for that team, and the 49ers are still number one DVOA, defense and offense. And so, and they actually faced opponents in DVOA that were ranked higher than the Cowboys. Now, that's not to say that the Cowboys, the 49ers are better because the Cowboys did that or have that advantage because of that. But I think it's just one of those things where we get so many things to talk about. And the game of the Chiefs, that is the last game that the 49ers lost. Those of us who are 49ers fans who watched the game, it felt gross at the end. But yet, if you really watch it throughout, like a lot of games that get out of hand late, it was a little bit closer than it may have seemed. The 49ers were coming off injuries. Mooney Ward wasn't fully healthy. Nick Bosa wasn't fully healthy. CMC had just got into the hotel the day before. They hadn't had their full install. And the fact that after that game, they've gone on to win 11 straight, to me, it's just like you play who's in front of you. And the way that the Niners are dominating right now, particularly on offense and as consistently as they have, I just think it puts that to bed. But I understand the conversation.
I agree. I mean, like you said, you play who's in front of you. You can't really change that, and that's why I kind of view strength of schedule as an argument that has some use, but also is flawed. Strength of schedule essentially is telling you who you're going to play next year based on the previous season. But the NFL is a year-to-year league. We've seen teams go from worst to first. We've seen teams go from first to out of the playoffs. There's so much change year to year because of how the NFL operates, with the salary cap being a hard cap rather than in other leagues. It's a lot different. And so, the NFL is a different league, and that's something that we do have to understand when talking about strength of schedule. Just looking at these two teams, the Cowboys came in with a bottom 5 strength of schedule, and the 49ers came in with a top 5. It ended with both teams or with the Cowboys having a better strength of schedule than the 49ers in terms of how hard their schedule was. And to me, that's why I don't judge teams based off their strength of schedule. I rather judge teams based off of really the eye test and how they're playing, because you can understand the Chiefs, right? I mean, we can talk about the Chiefs because they are a team that the 49ers lost to. They lost to the Indianapolis Colts. Are you going to put that against them for the remainder of the year just because they lost to the Indianapolis Colts? No. And you can make that argument this year, especially with almost every other team. And so that's why it's important to note strength of schedule is there, but also look at other metrics and really look at the eye test of how the teams are playing.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Before I say my comment, shout out to Teron Lewis in the super chat today. Shout out to you, love you too, brother. Faithful as always, man. But for me, I think it's the same exact explanation you guys have, in the sense of, like, strength of schedule comes out in the beginning of the year. All it tells you is, like, okay, the teams you are playing this year, majority of them made the playoffs. Like, that's all it's telling you. Like, it has nothing to do with actually how good a team is. What strength of schedule is missing is a bunch of context in terms of players getting hurt, people getting traded, or players not re-signing with that team. Because obviously, for example, the Arizona Cardinals would be a much better team with Kyler Murray playing, right? Like, they're probably going to have a better record, which is going to shoot up the Niners' strength of schedule. Same thing for teams that Dallas has played. If you play a team that has a good quarterback, like Washington, if they had a good quarterback throughout the season, their strength of schedule probably increases a couple points. So, like, to me, all I see strength of schedule is telling you is, like, okay, well, next year, these teams that you just played aren't going to be good, or they're going to have a bounce back year, like the Cardinals probably, with a decent quarterback. So, like, to me, strength of schedule is just a bogus thing. I think it's one of those issues where I think fans just throw out there, in the sense of just telling other teams that they're not good. You play another 11 man on the field. The way I see it is, if you're dominating that team, it doesn't matter who the hell's on that field. For example, the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys defenses have been the best defenses all season, arguably. They've been dominating. So you can't really say if you put in a great offense in front of them, they're probably going to become not like the elite 1-2 defense, but they're probably going to be around that top 10 still. So realistically, it's still the same shit and being a good football team. So I don't get why fans are saying that. Another topic that got brought up by a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans, because all I see is Dallas Cowboy fans crying. Do you think the extra 2 days of rest is a benefit to the 49ers, or do you think that's a benefit of getting the 2 seed?
I mean, I think it can be both, right? If it was the thing that got lost is like the 2 seed. So this idea that in most years past, if you're the Dallas Cowboys going into Santa Clara to face a 2 seed, right? This team had already had a couple weeks off, and I think it's one of those things where Jerry Jones is one of those guys in the competition committee and like looking at all of these different things about this as far as like putting. The NFL is a money-driven league, and Jerry Jones was right up front and wanting that Monday night game for all that revenue. And there his team was with an extra 2 days to prepare for a playoff game, by the way, going on the road. And I get it, but it's like, to me, man, you don't win your division. It's a horse apiece. Basically, both teams, the Niners and the Cowboys, are playing the same amount of games in the same amount of 2 weeks span, right? Niners got 6 games to get ready for the Seahawks. The Cowboys got 8 games. It's not like this is a 5-day rest. It's not like they're going on a Sunday night game and then going to a Thursday night game like in the regular season. I just think this is getting overblown. But I do think that 2 days rest is an advantage for the 49ers, and they don't have to travel. So, yeah, it's good for the Niners.
I don't think you can dispute that it's good for the Niners. I mean, they are getting more rest. The way that I look at it is 2 ways. One, I mean, David said it. The 49ers should get a bye in the old system, but I also want to stay up to date. The Cowboys got more rest going into the divisional. I mean, going into the wild card round. The 49ers were on they played on Saturday, so they were on 1 day short of rest, and that's why they have 2 days of extra rest. Understandably, now it's a tougher game for sure, but there is that element to it as well. And I think that it's important, but I also think that at this point of the season, both teams are going to come ready come playoff time. And I do think, though, that it can vary into the physicality of things because of the amount of travel, in that Dallas had to travel to Tampa Bay, is going to come home, and then had to travel again. But for the fans that are unhappy, I'll say 2 things as well. One, the 49ers were the 6th seed last year. They had to do this. They had to travel 3 straight times. And 2, one thing that a very fellow 49ers, not necessarily creator, but a guy who puts a lot of stuff out there, Rich Madrid, he said it all week. The Rams did this last year, and they had to travel a lot, and they had the Monday game, and they had to do the short week, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So I don't know. Like it's not like we've seen that it can be like an added advantage or a disadvantage.
In terms of fans just crying, right? That's all it is fans just crying in the sense of 2 extra days, right? To me, it doesn't matter 2 extra days, 3 extra days. Like the way the Dallas Cowboy fans are talking, like you legitimately, or like especially players and the actually I should say more so the players. The way the players are talking, that 2 days of rest does not matter. All right, you got Michael Parsons saying this is a game I've been waiting for. You got Dak Prescott saying the same thing. So it's like realistically, just shut up, because your players are saying the complete opposite of what you're saying right now. So like for me, I think Cowboy fans in general, but I think also too though, if 49er fans were in the situation, I think they'd be saying the same thing though. Like to be honest,
Definitely.
like realistically, I could see our fan base saying the same thing. Like, oh, 2 days of rest is an advantage, but like realistically, I don't think it's an advantage, to be honest. Like teams don't take an extra 2 days of rest to prep. Like honestly, teams usually take 4 days to prep. All it is just off days for their legs to get like freshened up. But looking at the Cowboys Niner matchup in the divisional round, right? This nice showdown, the historic mark that we get to see as a fan base again. We just saw them last year. We went into their house. We went to Jerry's World. And Debo took the chain from all of them, right? Debo literally snatched their chain. So where I'm looking at this is this game the beginning of the rivalry continuing in the 20th or whatever in 21st century, or is it just another playoff game?
I think that I had mentioned this at the beginning. I do think, and plus Dallas is coming back into Levi's in the regular season next year. We already know that's a home opponent for the Niners. So like it's they don't even have to meet in the playoffs next year for this rivalry to be kind of coming on. And so I do think, put it this way. I think in the 90s, it wasn't the Cowboys and Niners traded blows in the regular season, and the Cowboys had the upper hand in the NFC Championship game for a couple of years before the 94 season. Then the Niners win. Next year, Dallas comes back. And so there was that back and forth. And I think until one of these teams wins it all, I think that's what's really going to galvanize this is like a big rivalry. But I'll tell you this. I mean, if they're meeting 2 years in a row in the playoffs now, and you go in the regular season, this happens again. I think this does have, because both teams have, to me, very good rosters up and down the board. I think both teams have the ability to compete going into the future. There's going to be some decisions both teams have to make about that personnel, but yeah, I do. I think this is awesome, and I think this is great for the league, and I guarantee you the league is stoked that this is the matchup, Cowboys-Niners, and they want that in prime. They want that at that night slot. So I can't wait to see what the ratings are for this game. I think it's gonna surpass any game you've seen in the playoffs in the last several years.
I agree, and I think that this is the start of it. I mean, everybody knows the history between these two teams, and now that you're seeing matchups that are going to happen in 3 consecutive years, that's huge, especially because we've seen it now at both stadiums. We've seen it at Levi's, or we're going to see it at Levi's, and we saw it obviously in Jerry World last year. And so I think it's important to note that both fan bases are now getting a touch of this, and also the amount of talking that goes through. It's clear that both teams want this matchup. In that obviously the 49ers are going to play whoever's in front of them. But looking at what the Cowboys said this week, Micah Parsons talked about it. Dak Prescott said, most definitely, this is the matchup I want. Zach Martin said about how it stung last year and how they wanted to do better. CeeDee Lamb said he was driven to play better because he only had 1 catch in that game. There are a lot of different things about last year's matchup that the Cowboys are looking forward to. And I think, yeah, this is going to be the start, especially with the amount of games that you're going to see in recent time.
I mean, I absolutely agree. It becomes a rivalry, right? Especially when you have all the playoff and the history behind it. But you can't call something a rivalry if only one team is dominating all the time. That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? But so for me, I don't see it as a rivalry yet until Dallas could beat us.
Hey, Packers Bears, bro. Packers Bears.
And that's to me, that's not a rivalry either because Aaron Rodgers owns them, right? Like, to be honest, like you can't call it a rivalry if you haven't won recently. So for me, I'm looking at it like, all right, well, if Dallas beats us, which they won't, then it becomes a rivalry, right? Because we knocked each other out of the playoffs in back-to-back years, and we're keeping each other from the great destination everyone's trying to get to, the Super Bowl. So I don't think it's a rivalry just yet because Dallas hasn't won in the playoffs. At least for this new era, right? Like, 'cause it's the era that we've had in the past, like when you had Charles Haley go over to Dallas and all that, like. Yeah. When you had stuff like that was a rivalry. Like, that was deep down. They hated each other. They guts. I don't think the 49ers hate Dallas. I think Dallas hates the 49ers right now. So, like, the history is a rivalry. Absolutely 100% a rivalry. But, like, between these players, I don't think there's a rivalry. I think it's more so Dallas hates the 49ers rather than the other way around.
Well, and I think I agree. Like, I'm older than you guys. I grew up as a diehard in that era. So, like Crocker goes out and say my hate for Dallas is different, right? Like, it's this idea that I agree though with you, Marco, is that this has not been a true rivalry for a long time. So, like, right now, it's very clear that the Rams and the Seahawks are bigger rivalries with the Niners. And now, though, because the Rams, and who knows, we can talk about the Rams later, but like, I do think rivalries are contingent on competition. Right. And I do think that just because there's nostalgia like I have for the Cowboys and Niners rivalry, it still doesn't feel quite like it did back then yet. And I think if they trade blows in different ways over the years, one of these teams, they actually get to the top and that's when but like the Cowboys Niners, as far as a rivalry goes, isn't like running the league right now like it did in the 90s. And so it doesn't mean that none of those teams are irrelevant. It's just like that matchup isn't quite top billing just yet. But I think after tomorrow, and depending on whether those teams do afterwards, can have a lot to do with it.
No, and that's what I'm talking about. Like the history is absolutely 100% a rivalry. Like the history is guaranteed. Like when I was younger, I used to go back, right? Like before I even started like getting super down into like football, what I would do for every team that I liked is I would go down and I would like learn their like 100% their history, right? Like that's just who I was. So like I grew to hate the Dallas Cowboys because I learned that they freaking were knocking us out of the playoffs every year, and then they would go on and win it, and we couldn't get past them, right? Until we finally did. So for me, I hate the Cowboys, like especially their fan base. I can't stand them. They're obnoxious. Like they rub me the wrong way, right? So to me, that's why I wanted to see if the rivalry's still there before we get into talking actual team, right? So Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, the quarterback competition. That's what it's come down to, right? Playoffs, everyone talks about quarterbacks leading the way. Dak Prescott had a hell of a game against Tampa Bay. Brock Purdy had a hell of a game against Seattle. So when we look at it, one is a veteran who has been shamed for not winning playoff games or showing up in the playoff moment. He did on Monday Night Football on the biggest stage. Brock Purdy, a young rookie, not playing like a rookie, had a hell of a playoff game. What do you guys think about the quarterback matchup? Do you guys think this is a quarterback matchup that is going to give fireworks and give the fans a bunch of points? Or do you think it's going to be a quarterback matchup that struggles against both defenses that are actually really good?
You can go ahead, David.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I got a nuanced, we all do. Like this idea or appreciation for who Brock Purdy is, what are his limitations, what he's capable of. I think what we're seeing though right now is Kyle Shanahan is in his bag. I think Kyle Shanahan to me is the MVP of this team right now, and I'm not, and we can get into that. But I want to give Brock Purdy for, regardless of some of the mistakes that he might make, he bounces back from them, and he does a good job of executing this offense. And regardless of what we can say, Christian McCaffrey clearly is the one that the controlled variable that elevated to the success earlier on. But they're going 34.5 points, and it's been consistent outside the Seattle game, which kneeling down at the one pick six. I mean that was almost right up there too. So aside from that game, like they just keep getting points on the board. They keep moving the ball down the field. They keep having success on third down, getting a lot of first downs. Average yards per play just keeps being consistently high. I think that it's really going to come to both offenses having the capability to be explosive. Where I think that this is going to turn, as far as the quarterbacks go, is what the defenses dictate. Now we've been talking about this is a different question, but I think it's really difficult to say on paper I'm stacking the box against Brock Purdy when it sets up gaps on the outside and for these guys to get yak, and especially if you start in 21 and somebody breaks out like McCaffrey or Juice or what have you. But long story short, it's going to come down to edge rushers. Who's going to have the success? Is it going to be Micah Parsons making Brock Purdy uncomfortable? Is it going to be Nick Bosa, Samson Ebicom, and company making a Dak? And right now, I'm not saying Tyler Smith and Teron Smith are trash heap in pass protection. I have a lot bigger questions about that tandem than I do with Trent Williams and McGlinchey right now. And I think that's what it comes down to matchup. Sometimes it's not always about the quarterback, it's about, like you just said, Marco, like before, like the context of those games, like who's hurt, who's injured, who's got that. And I think to me, that's going to be, if Nick both game, so that's what's going to elevate. I think both quarterbacks are going to try to play mistake-free football, and it's all going to be about what the defense presents in front of them.
I think I agree in that the quarterbacks, it's not that they're a product of their system, because I don't think that's true. But the quarterbacks, their performance in a way is also revolved around what's happening around them. How is the defenses playing? Because obviously both defenses have a chance to disrupt, especially in this game where both defenses are turnover centric. Both defenses are pretty good in most aspects of the game. Obviously, both sides have their flaws. Obviously, Dallas a little more against the run, the 49ers a little more susceptible against the pass and the explosive play range. But overall, I do think that the quarterback battle is something to talk about, but I also think that there's so much more going on, as there has been throughout the entirety of this 11-game winning streak for the 49ers and really the season for the Cowboys. Because if we talk about Dak Prescott's season, he threw 15 interceptions, a career high, while playing in just 12 games. That's really nothing where you go and you're really ecstatic about or excited about. And so you got to wonder, why was Dallas successful, especially when they went 4-1 with their backup. You point to their defense, you point to everything else that works about their offense, especially their running game. And so I do think that it's important, but I also think that we need to understand the entirety and the complexity of both teams, because that's I think where when we look at the title again, who emerges victorious, that's where that argument comes from.
I absolutely agree. Like when you look at the quarterbacks, um, last on Monday night, I saw Dak Prescott pick apart the Tampa Bay defense because they were running a zone at him, right? They were playing zone, and he absolutely picked them apart. And then you go to watch, and this is no knock to Brock Purdy for anyone who's like, "Oh, you're bashing Brock Purdy." Brock Purdy's everything for Brock Purdy in the sense was schemed up, right? Like he had a lot of wide open guys. I know there's a stat out there. Can't remember the exact stat, but like 15 out of his throws or something like that were like 5 yards of separation or something like that. So for me, when you're looking at that, it's like, okay, Brock Purdy could hit what's dialed up. And that's what you're asking for in the playoffs. You're not asking for much more in a Kyle Shanahan system because his system's is dialed up to get points no matter what. Like that's what Kyle does. He's a genius at that. But now where I'm curious on where Dak kind of plays a favor into him is this actually the statement. I was going to actually talk about this. I think Cowboys are going to have designed runs for Dak by Showboat 278. I don't think necessarily the designed runs, but I think they are going to have a couple of read options with Tony Pollard that kind of holds the defensive ends and the linebackers. But I think the key factor for Dak Prescott is his legs. I know he came off a gruesome injury past couple of years or whatnot, but when he's running the ball, I think that's when he's most effective. So last week on Monday night, he had a 15-yard gain on third down to move the chains. So like that's who Dak Prescott is. Like he's gonna pick you apart from the pocket, but he has the mobility to take off and let loose and run the ball. And if he does that, and we don't have the rush lane integrity that the 49ers have been known to have at times, because when we play mobile quarterbacks, there's times where we get out of our rush lanes. For example, Justin Fields, and then he ends up making a spectacular play. Um, so for me, when I see that, is if Dak does that, Dak might have the edge if he's running around like he used to when he was a little bit younger before that injury. Now, where I think Brock Purdy has the edge is he has Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. You can even throw in Jawan Jennings in there because Jawan Jennings is going to be in there a lot to block because I know Kyle Shanahan wants Jennings to come back and peel back on a kind of more of on an outside zone and clean house on Michael Parsons. I could guarantee you there will be a nice block from Jawan Jennings on Michael Parsons. And then you could even throw in Elijah Mitchell because Elijah Mitchell is coming back and looking healthy. So I think that's where like the two systems, in my opinion, are completely different. Like because you have a system that if Dak is on, they're one of the best offenses in the league. And then you have another system where if Kyle is calling plays, like he's in his bag, he's doing what he does on a regular, then that's when you get your 30 to 40 points. And I think that's what we've seen as of late. I think Dak Prescott has been Kyle Shanahan has been in his bag so much that he hasn't been giving as much credit as he probably should be, and is more so going to Brock Purdy when it realistically it's 50-50 right now. Next, really, not really segment, but because Micah Parsons was mentioned, Micah Parsons versus Nick Bosa. Who has a bigger impact on this game Sunday night?
I personally think that Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa are very close to each other as far as this DPOI competition. I do think Nick Bosa deserves it, but I also think that I have that respect for Micah Parsons' game. I do think that Nick Bosa is how do I so there's a great chart that came out that talked about pass rush wins versus actual sacks getting home. Now, depending on depending on what industry actually calls a pass rush win a pass rush win. And I think sometimes there are certain organizations that are more liberal or lenient in that regard. And so Parsons, though, was way far to the right, top of the chart in pass. Bosa was like sacks above expectation was like way at the top, right? And so this is where I kind of see like it confirms something that I watch when I watch all 22. Like Parsons is like such a beast, but there are times when they get in trouble where he can be very undisciplined and not always contain in certain situations because he's so athletic. He's such a freak, and that offenses can sometimes take advantage of that. It doesn't mean it always works in offense's favor. And I think that Nick Bosa is just one of those guys that is a little bit.
Hey, David.
More, oh,
but before you keep going, is your mic hitting your sweatshirt or anything? Because everyone in the comments is saying your mic is very chippy and cutting out and stuff.
Is that sound fine now or not?
No, it's still like you kind of get like a static from it if anything.
Well, yeah, I don't know if here. Let me see this. Is that better or worse?
Go ahead and talk.
How about that?
That's perfect right there.
I think I had my gain knob on my blue mic was turned. My bad. So I think that Parsons can be sometimes more undisciplined in that regard. I'm not throwing Parsons under the bus, but if you're asking me to compare in those situations, I think that Nick Bosa is also asked to do a little bit more in the run game. I think he's definitely a better run defender in those situations as well. And I think that the fact that Nick is one of those people that's going to be also selfless in that regard. So people can talk about everybody saying, hey, Brock goes to his left, rolls to his left, things like that. I've also seen Brock be able to kind of do that dead leg. And then also he's had some success on plays that were going to his right as well lately. And so I think it's one of those things that's part of Brock's game. Doesn't mean he's not going to get sacked by Micah Parsons. Doesn't mean he's going to make a mistake. But I do think the aggression of the Dallas defense sometimes can be the Achilles heel. And just like for the Niners, like one thing I've noticed the last several games is that Niners have everything under control, and then you send a guy like Fred Warner on a blitz, and you're on the ground, or I think Kyle's going to take advantage of that aggressive mindset. Doesn't mean that he's going to win every matchup, but I also think that Bosa going up against Teron Smith and Tyler Smith, especially, I think bodes better for the Niners and the Cowboys in my opinion.
For me, if we're talking about who do I think could make the biggest impact, or whose impact may be more for their respective team, I think I will go with Micah Parsons in Dallas, because I think when we talk about it, Nick Bosa, maybe this is not, I'm not going to necessarily say recency bias, but the 49ers have a crop of pass rushers. They have Charles Omenihu, Eric Armstead. They have guys who can get to the quarterback. Obviously, Nick Bosa is the best of them, but we did just see a game against the Seattle Seahawks where Bosa, if we're being honest, 49ers fans will not want that talk, was stonewalled by Abraham Lucas for a good portion of that game. Abraham Lucas played a very good game, and he's an up-and-coming right tackle, but overall, the 49ers were fine in that game. Charles Omenihu ended up having his regular 5 pressures that he's had in games. He had the 2 sacks. And what do I mean is guys can step up when the top guys sometimes have off games. And that's how the 49ers are built. And that's no disrespect to Nick Bosa. He's had a phenomenal season, but that's what the 49ers are meant for. Whereas Micah Parsons, I think he's more integral to their success along the defensive line. And also, I think he's going to be more vital because I think he's going to be tested in the run game a good amount. The 49ers are going to utilize that stretch offense to try and hit the outside zone, because the Cowboys are a little more stout in the run game on the inside rather than the outside. And we saw last year that they struggled to contain Deebo Samuel in the outside zone. And so I think Micah Parsons is going to face a bigger challenge. If he can succeed in that challenge in the outside zone next year, not next year, in this next week in this game, I think that could bode well for the Dallas Cowboys if they can stop a good portion of the 49ers run game. But also his ability to get to the passer, I think that his ability to get to the passer is a little more vital for his team, because if he doesn't, then I think that Dallas as a whole, that aggressiveness and that pass rush, when you're being that aggressive but not able to get home, especially with your top guy, then it creates more for the offense.
I think you guys both have absolutely great takes on this, in sense of like, because you have Nick Bosa, right, who's going to be lined up, like you said, against Tyron Smith, and then who's on the other end, I don't even know.
It's going to be the other Smith, Tyler Smith,
right? So you have those two guys, in my opinion, I'm glad they're both playing, because Adam Peters, in my opinion, was better than both tackles right now when I like the last couple games of the season. Um, but this comment's a very great one because it could be a reason Michael Parsons has a big game. We know Mike McGlinchey's had a hell of a season. He's actually picked it up. A lot of people, you can't really bash Mike McGlinchey right now because he's actually been playing really good football at the right tackle position. So Teron Lewis said, I know Michael Parsons moves around a lot, but if I'm Quinn, I'm lining him up against Mike McGlinchey 90% of the time. When he's talking about Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator from Dallas Cowboys, I would do the same thing. And I would have, to be honest, I would have Micah Parsons have the ability to walk around the line um, and pick who he wants to go up against every down. So if he wants to go up against the center, he's scooting someone up. Hey, I got Brendel. Hey, I got so and so. Right, like let him pick and choose his battles because that's the kind of pass rusher he is. I think when he's lined up um, along the edge majority of the game, I think you could take him out of the game because you could run around him, you could run at him. He's not the greatest run defender, so you could do a lot of things to take him out of a game offensively. Now, I'm gonna say Nick Bosa has the bigger game because he has a chip on his shoulder, because he had a week like last week. Now, you don't see Nick Bosa have weeks like last week where he didn't even register a pressure. And I think if Nick Bosa um, could generate pressure on Dak Prescott, I think that's going to be the key to the game. Because if Nick Bosa, so last week we saw our defensive line not necessarily struggle, but we saw them at times struggle to get pressure, and then when they got there, they didn't get home.
Mhm.
Now, what I see is they're missing Nick Bosa's presence last week. Now, what I'm talking about that is they were able to actually send Charles Cross and send Abraham Lucas one on one with Nick Bosa, and they were able to hold their own. And oh my God, real quick, off topic, Seattle Seahawks have a great tackle tandem that is a young rookie tandem. Probably, arguably, going to be one of the best tackle tandems in the
Yeah.
NFL within the next couple of years, easily. Um, so Seattle was able to send one tackle at him. Now, I don't think Dallas could do that with Tyler Smith or Tyron Smith. Either one, I don't think they could block Nick Bosa one on one. We see what Nick Bosa did to Tyron last year. Now, Tyler Smith has actually struggled in the pass protection at left tackle. So if you line Nick Bosa up with him, I think that's going to be a very very um, tough matchup for Smith because you have to be in the nit and gritty. You have to learn how to actually get hands, and he's not that technical. He's more of a I'm gonna bully you kind of left tackle. So I think both of you. I'm not gonna say who's gonna have a better game or who's gonna be more productive or have a more of an impact. I think both players are hell of players. So for me, that was the let you guys answer that one and me just comment off of it. So
Real quick, Marco, because I do
go
have a
ahead.
topic that I do want to address as
Of
well
course.
in relation to this. I saw earlier this week on Twitter some analysts brought up how Micah Parsons last year was put into coverage like an off-ball linebacker 42% of the time. This year, obviously, he's a little more refined as a pass rusher. He's utilized as a pass rusher more. Do you think that that number is going to decrease significantly, or do you think it'll remain similarly with the way that the 49ers utilize 21 personnel, 12 personnel, and keep that base package out in the field?
I think you don't drop every time you drop Micah Parsons into coverage, you're doing a disservice to your entire team and you're actually helping out the offense. I don't care what anyone says. Micah Parsons is a hell of an athlete, but he's not good in coverage. Like realistically, Micah Parsons is a good off-ball linebacker covering the run if you're going to have him play the run, and he's a good edge rusher. And if I was Micah Parsons or I was Dan Quinn, I would not even use him as an off-ball linebacker. He is my defensive end, and that is it. Because if he is most productive coming off the edge with how athletic and how freaky fast he is. So for me, I think it's gonna be a lot less being in coverage than last year.
And that's where I agree with you. And it's the same way I feel about, okay, you took a Micah Parsons. We keep forgetting that, like, we focus so much on Nick Bosa. The Niners have all pro players at every level, right? So Fred Warner, once upon a time, was the defensive MVP on this team, right? Like, so, and still, this is where I feel very similar. I'm not saying that Fred doesn't have success in stunts going up the middle, things like that. I do, though, feel like this in this matchup. Dak Prescott has shown the ability to defeat blitz successfully. Okay, where I feel like when you put Fred in a position where you're taking one of your the best coverage linebacker to me in the NFL consistently, and you take him out of those situations where you're clogging up lanes or being able to cover ground, I think that just works in favor for Dak Prescott. And so I'm not saying that you never blitz. I'm not saying you never send more than 4, but I think that the Niners can have success rushing 4 with their personnel with these matchups with Smith brothers, or they're not brothers, but the Smiths, and I think that, so very similar to Micah. I agree with you, Marco. If they send Micah into coverage, you've already shot yourself in the foot. You've got to let your horses run, and the way he runs the fastest, the way he runs at his best as an edge rusher. Off-ball linebacker is fine, but I think just that guy steaming off the edge. And I know McGlinchey's played well. I get that. I'm not trashing McGlinchey. McGlinchey's probably played himself into an incredible contract, right? Contract is up. The bottom he is, and I think I'd be surprised at this point. I don't have any insight on this, but the Niners are probably looking around thinking, how do you upgrade here? I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I still think I'd be a homer to say otherwise. That matchup doesn't give me a little bit of, concern. Okay, I think that clearly Micah Parsons is a tier or two above in that regard and what he does against what Mike McGlinchey does. We know McGlinchey's a run specialist over his career, but he's been a lot better in pass blocking of late. I still think it's fair to say that Parsons clearly has the upper hand. So if they want to put him in coverage, I hope they do.
So I know there's always that one player that comes in and steps up. Now, I call that the clutch gene player of the game, right? So we did this last week after the Seattle game. Now we're going to predict our clutch gene player of the game in sense of who do you think is going to have either the play of the game or that moment where they take over the game. For the 49ers, whether it's the 49ers winning them or the Dallas Cowboys, who do you guys think the clutch gene player of the game is going to be?
All right, I can go first. Defensively, I'll go with Jimmy Ward. Reason being, CeeDee Lamb's going to be utilized out of the slot. CeeDee Lamb is going to he's going to have this inside-outside responsibility. And so I think Dallas is going to try and scheme their guys. What I said with Jesse earlier this week, I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas tries to scheme their guys where if they put Schultz as an inline blocker, they have Lamb on the same side in the slot, where they have route combinations for those two, or they have Schultz in the slot. And I think that regardless, Dallas likes to work up the seam, and they like to work that matchup where Jimmy Ward is going to be. And Jimmy Ward has shown, especially over the second half of the year when he's been healthy, that he can lock them guys up. So I think that matchup is going to be important because that's where Dallas is going to look to target. And so because of that, I think if Jimmy Ward's able to win that matchup, he's going to have a big play.
Yeah, I think defensively for me is that this idea that Ron, I mean, there's so many guys. He said Jimmy Ward, can't talk about Jimmy Ward.
So
now.
it doesn't have to be on the defensive side of the ball. It could be offensive side of the ball too if you wanted.
Well, I'm gonna go both sides then. I'll go defense, offense, go back. Defense, I've been saying Mooney Ward. And at this time, Mooney got last week. This is where I say clutch gene. You asked me for the clutch gene player. I think last week he got humbled a little bit against DK. DK had a man game, right? And that being said, there are a lot of situations where Mooney isn't always a horrible position, but DK had the upper hand. I haven't seen though where Mooney has one of those games. One was where he was clearly not fully healthy against the Chiefs. But I think that in this particular situation, one thing that the Cowboys they're scoring points, right? But I don't think the receiver room is as dynamic as it was last year. And I think that Mooney is in one of those situations where he is going to rise to the occasion. And I think because of that frustration, he's going to have Lamb, great player. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to make life difficult. And I think that there's going to be other guys that end up getting turnovers because of the job that Mooney does. I think that Dak's going to be forced to throw it into some places that he doesn't want to, thinking he's got it. And I think guys like Talanoa Hufanga, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, I think those guys are going to be opportunistic about those. But I think Mooney's not going to get the accolades. He's not going to have the INT, but I think he's going to rise to the occasion. Offensively, I've been gone back and forth. You and me texted about who we think is going to be the first touchdown, who's going to be, and I think that to me, I think that I talked about Debo, talked about CMC, talked about Elijah Mitchell. I think this is a George Kittle game, and I think that sometimes we box score scout things to say, okay, he's had more production, but he had 3 targets last year against Dallas, despite running 24, 25 routes. I mean, he wasn't being targeted. You know, we've seen that it's not always a crazy amount of targets from Brock Purdy, but there's been this red zone success. I think in this game, this is where Kyle really shows the league, where it's like, you think you got me stopped with here. You think you're going to stifle this. I've been using him so much as a decoy here. I'm helping out in the run game. And I think George is going to have, I'm not saying he's going to have 10 targets or anything like that, but I think he's going to make it count. And I think that he's going to hit pay dirt at least once in this game. And he's going to, and that connection between, and that confidence that they've bred together is going to show out.
So yeah, I do see Kittle game happening, but my clutching player of the game was gonna go. I have a feeling Talanoa Hufanga gets his hands on a ball. I think Kyle's gonna be having him play that robber, or not Kyle, D'Amico Ryans is gonna have him playing like that robber role where he gets to be himself and roam. And now I think what's gonna lead him to a play is Dak Prescott. Now Dak Prescott is super smart pre-snap, post-snap. He knows where he wants to go with the ball. But now, so is Talanoa Hufanga. He's super smart. He knows what offenses want to do to the defense. Now, I think he's going to get his hands on the ball, create an interception, whether that's a tip or he intercepts something. He's going to create a play that changes momentum at some point in the game, whether the 49ers already have it and they completely take momentum where they put their heel on Dallas's neck. Offensively, I'm going to go Elijah Mitchell.
Okay.
Because so I think last week Elijah Mitchell came in. He didn't play like he should have. Obviously, we also got to remember that Seattle's running a bear front. They were kind of stacking the box too in a way. So they're running different fronts at the 49ers in order to take that run game away. And if it wasn't for the beautiful scheme play by Christian McCaffrey that gained 68 yards, Christian McCaffrey would have only had like 50 yards rushing total, like on every other run. So it wasn't very productive in the run game. But I think what Kyle's going to try to do is attack them in the run game heavily, because if you attack the run game, you're attacking Micah Parsons. You're attacking Van Der Esch, who is a good run defender, but he's not the best. I don't know their other linebacker. Don't know his name. But I guarantee you, since I don't know his name, he probably isn't that good. So that's why Kyle Shanahan's going to attack him. Now, their defensive line is one of the defensive lines that I don't believe they have what it takes to stop Kyle Shanahan's outside zone. Now, what I mean by that is they don't have that 3-tech that is going to force you to have to cut everything back in, where you're literally being fed to the linebackers and to the other defensive tackles. I don't think they have that. I think they have a bunch of defensive tackles who are good gap fillers. And that's what Kyle Shanahan loves to pick apart, is those kind of defensive tackles. Now, moving forward, because I know everyone wants to know who emerges victorious, right? Now, do you guys think the 49ers come in and absolutely dominate the game? Do you think the 49ers come in and it's a fist fight with Dallas? Do you think Dallas comes in and dominates in San Francisco or wherever the 49ers play? Or do you think it's going to be one of those good boxing matches where every time you throw a jab, you better know what's coming next, because there's going to be a combination coming with it? What do you guys think?
I think this game, take the Seahawks game last week, 17-16 at the half, right? Niners are down. Ends up being, really, when you look at it, it could have gone a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, Niners 500 to 300 yards, total yards, take out their starters, could have been even worse. So sometimes games can be close. The Chiefs game, a game that was close in the beginning, all of a sudden the wheels fall. So it can hinge on these plays. I fully expect this game to be good early, and I think that it could be a game that both teams are capable of winning. Here's where what tips the scale in favor of the 49ers for me. I think this defense has been the strength throughout the season in so many ways, but lately, I think they got a chip on their shoulder. Fred Warner talked about this, how Kyle will go to these meetings and be like, try to really get their goat, like really try to say, hey, you got to play better. You know, and like he knows, he's not trying to throw him under the bus, but like Kyle also means that. Like he's like, we got it, we have elite capability. This defense could be like legendary in their own right if they want to be, when they want to be. And I think that if the Niners just play like 85% of their best, like I really feel this bodes well for the matchups that we've talked about. My prediction for this game is it could go back and forth a little bit. I think at the end, it's 49ers 30, Cowboys 20. I feel like I don't think Brock Purdy is going to be throwing bombs down the field, but I think that Kyle's going to have the Dallas Cowboys defense aggressive and over pursuit, kind of struggling. I think they'll struggle against the run game a lot more than people have been mentioning because all we talk about is Brock Purdy. And it's going to be, like you said, Marco, guys like Elijah Mitchell, unsung guys out of the backfield. It's not going to be one guy having 200 yards rushing. Respect the Cowboys. 30-20 is my prediction. Niners.
Yeah, I think that's a fair prediction. I thought that I know when I spoke earlier with Jesse, he said that he didn't think one team would hit 30. I said that there was a possibility that the Niners could hit 30 in this game, and I think it's going to be close. I think it's still going to be a one-score game, but I thought it was going to be either 27-23, 27-20, or like 31-23, somewhere in that range, because I think both teams will have to respect each other offensively. That's the strong suit. And while both teams have been very strong defensively this year, both teams are also offensive centric. And I think the 49ers will have a little bit of problem with a couple of things. I think the 49ers will have a problem with Tony Pollard. At least at first, I think Tony Pollard possesses something where he could hit the edge, and really, you only need one explosive play for to change the outcome of that game. And I think that Dak Prescott and his legs right now, I'm very curious to see what does DeMeco Ryan scheme up to change that part. And so the Dallas Cowboys, the one thing that I think goes in the 49ers' way is while they generate a lot of turnovers, those turnovers not normally, but those turnovers are majority fumbles, and the 49ers don't fumble the football. And whereas the 49ers generate a lot of interceptions, Dak Prescott throws a lot of interceptions. So I think that the turnover battle either favors them or it's going to be equal in this game, and that's why I have the Niners coming up on top.
I think you're absolutely right in the sense of it's going to be a closer game than fans would like, right? It's going to be one of those nail biters for a good portion of the game where it kind of has you on your heels. Now, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit though, Rohan, because you did say that both teams are offensive centric. I think the 49ers are the opposite of that, actually. I think when their defense is 100% playing like the defense they are, they're the best team in the league. Like in sense of their offense is getting the ball in great field position. Their offense is more productive because they don't feel like they have to go out and score 40 points. So they're playing loose. Like they're not really playing like, damn, every play needs to be perfect, right? So I feel like the 49ers are a little bit different than Dallas because Dallas, when their offense is struggling, their defense struggles. Or if their defense is struggling and then the offense is on, the offense starts to struggle. So like they don't necessarily play complementary football in the sense like the 49ers do, right? Like their defense plays well and then the offense will play well. The offense will struggle, the defense picks it up, and then the offense starts picking it up while the defense starts to struggle a bit, whatever. So like for me, I think that's going to be the biggest moment of the game is if Dallas defense gives up a touchdown, can Dak Prescott come and answer it, right? Because we know what we've seen with the 49ers is when they score, the defense comes onto the field a different animal. Like they come completely different. They're prepared, they're ready, and they don't allow you to get a touchdown. They don't allow you to answer it. They might let you get 3, but they're not letting you answer that touchdown. So for me, I think that's going to be the biggest key of the game is who plays better complementary football. And I think that's going to be the 49ers. And I think the 49ers come away with a 28-24 victory. Very close game. I don't see it being fireworks. I think it's going to be a nice physical freaking boxing match in there. Before we head out, last question before we head out. The other divisional round, right? Today we have I believe Kansas City and Jaguars, and then we have Philadelphia and the New York Giants. Who do you guys think comes out victorious today?
Well, it's interesting, man. You got the Jags right now is like at a minus 9.5 point spread for the Chiefs, and that is I mean, it's the playoffs. I get it. I think the Chiefs very well could demolish that. If they're fired on all cylinders. I think the Chiefs win. I think the Jags might cover though. I think the Chiefs have a way. They're just a great team, but 9.5 points is a big spread. And I
hold on. Hey, I gotta say something hella funny. So I'm pretty sure this dude, I don't know, at Ruzika, he doesn't even follow me, right? I'm pretty sure he's a Green Bay Packers fan, but he just DM'd me. I think this is the funniest thing ever. He just DM'd me like, okay, Marco, I'll hold off judgment on you and your SF 49ers sympathies until I see you eating a brat. I don't know if it's a brat or a brat, like, don't know.
Yeah.
But that's just hella funny. Like, I'm guessing it's like a brat Barbie. I don't know. But
no, it's a bratwurst.
It's a bratwurst.
Okay, that's what I figured. I was like, I was looking at it, I was like, let me ask these dudes what he's talking about because he's like until I see I love brats. I used to that's all I used to eat growing up. So I thought that was hella funny. I thought he was talking about brat, so I had to mention it to you guys right now.
Man, you just catching strays in your DM. Man. These guys, these randos from Green Bay on a Niners podcast.
I know,
That's
man.
amazing.
No, it's not. No, it's not because of that. It's because I write for Rohan now at Wisconsin. And
That's right.
So I thought it was funny. Like I was like, yeah, he's taking a shot at me, like my 49ers sympathies. I was like, oh man.
You see what you get into when you go over to Wisconsin. My wife's from Appleton, so it's like, yeah, you gotta deal with all those guys.
No, but I did throw a shot at the Wisconsin fan base in the sense of Packer fans and other teams. I was like, I know some of you guys might be Packers fans. I was like, but I'm a Niner. Like throw a little shade at them a little bit, nothing too much, but that's all love and games. But go ahead. Sorry for interrupting you.
I think the Jags will cover. I know that sounds crazy because Trevor Lawrence threw 4 picks in the game. The Chiefs could absolutely blow them out, and there's a spread for a reason. I think that against the spread, though, I've seen the Chiefs at home have some interestingly close games against opponents that they are much better. I think the Jags have their defense is starting to play a lot better, and I think that. People have laughed about the Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, whatever else, but ETN has been a key that's unlocked a lot of different things. I think Lawrence really rebounded very well. 2 guys who played bad first halves last week, Purdy and Lawrence, 2 guys that rebounded. I would say our Lawrence even rebounded better. Obviously, to me, had a much better game, at the end. So I like the Chiefs there. I like the Eagles, Giants. The homer in me wants the Giants to win, obviously, and wants to pick the Giants to win. I think that's a -7.5. I think the Eagles win. I think the Giants come down to earth. I could be very wrong. It's all going to hinge on how Jalen Hurts plays in his first playoff game. But I think the Eagles put it all together. They're balanced. I think the Giants' luck runs out. And then I think I see the Niners 30-20, and then tomorrow Bengals and Bills. That's one of those things that I think can be an absolute coin flip. I know that sounds like a hedge. I do think the Bengals cover. It's a -5.5 points spread in favor of the Bills at home. I know everybody's got it's just I've seen a lot of sloppy ball on side of Buffalo, but we've seen some sloppy ball with Cincinnati where they needed the Hubbard fumble return just to ice a game against the Ravens with Tyler Huntley. I think it goes either way. I think Bills pull it off, but I think I could be very wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, with the early game, the 9.5 point spread, I didn't even realize it was that much. But I do think Kansas City pulls this out. But especially with teams coming off the bye, I feel like you do have to shake off some of that rust. And the thing, though, with Jacksonville is while they went down 27 and they were able to come back in an improbable comeback, I don't think you can do that against the Chiefs. I think when you're going down by a significant amount, the Chiefs are a team that doesn't let the gas off. They will definitely not rest their starters. They're going to put their gas on the pedal and try and really blow you out the building. And I just think the Chiefs have the better matchup in this game. And I think their offense is just a little too much for that defense to where I don't know if Jacksonville can keep hand in hand. And I think the Chiefs defense is a little underrated as well. Everyone obviously talks about the offense, but the defense is not bad. The defense is solid. It's at least average over there in Kansas City. As for Buffalo and Cincinnati, I like Cincinnati more. Buffalo is a team that I was really high on coming into the year, but I like Cincinnati more. I think that they are a team that executes a little better. Buffalo has been inopportune to do a lot of mistakes this year, and I don't know how well that bodes in playoff football. Now, the issue with Cincinnati is they're not losing. I don't think Jonah Williams is playing, so they're missing their tackles in this game, and that's a big thing. I think the offensive line really is integral to a part of their success, especially when you remember last year how Joe Burrow was getting sacked a lot. And so I think it's a toss-up at the moment. I probably will go Cincinnati, but I think that this one's going to be a close, fun matchup with the Cincinnati being down their offensive lineman.
I'm gonna go Kansas City. First game, I think Jags do cover. I think Jags are a good enough offense to make it a shootout in a way, like in the sense of both defenses. I don't think Kansas City has an elite defense. I don't think they have like the top 10, top 15. They're kind of around that range, or like 16, 17. Like some games don't look dominant. Some games they look like, whoa, what the hell's that defense coming from, right? So I think that's where it's going to become more of an offensive shootout. And I think, man, I don't care how great of a game Trevor Lawrence has played. I don't care if Trevor Lawrence has never lost on a Saturday or a Friday, like these stats that people are coming up with, right? Like, I don't care about if he's undefeated on Saturday games, like throughout his career in college, high school, and NFL. Like, bro, you're playing Patrick Mahomes. You think Patrick Mahomes cares about that? No. Patrick Mahomes is coming in. He's going to light your defense up. You better be able to score and not throw 4 interceptions. If you throw 4 interceptions, Patrick Mahomes isn't Justin Herbert. He's going to score points, and he's going to make sure he keeps scoring points. He's going to try to score 70 on you if you throw 4 interceptions. I guarantee you he's going to do that. So I think that's where I go Kansas City. Philadelphia, I mean, Philadelphia is one of the completest, like, most complete teams in the league, like, outside of the 49ers. I would honestly take those two teams and I would throw a quarter in the air. And, like, wherever it lands, like, that's the team that it goes that day. Like, I think Jalen Hurts is a phenomenal quarterback. I think he's developed very nicely for the Philadelphia Eagles. Their defense is super underrated. They have 2 good corners on the outside. They got good safeties. They got a good group of linebackers. Their defensive line is good. Like, honestly, that is a very complete, well team. They have the best offensive line in the league. I think they dominate the New York Giants today. And then you have the Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati game. That game's interesting because, like Rohan said, I do like Cincinnati for the sense of they don't make mistakes. They play clean football in a way. Like, they know how to execute. They know what they want to do. Like they get to it real quick. But no offensive line. You have to go to Buffalo in a hostile environment. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills in this one. Very close margin by 3 points or less. And the reason I'm going to pick Buffalo is because of the atmosphere, because of everything that's gone on with DeMar Hamlin. I think that team is playing extra, right? They're playing for that extra, like the extra energy that they have for their brother. But the main reason is that offensive line of the Cincinnati Bengals. It's gross. I feel bad for Joe Burrow. They try to fix the offensive line, and then everyone gets hurt. Like that offensive line room might be cursed. They should probably do something about it. Go have someone bless it or take the curse off because that offensive line is very bad. Every year they sign people and then they get hurt. But that's it. I know we all have high expectations for the 49ers on Sunday. I know it'll be like 6 o'clock where Dave is watching. It'll be 3 o'clock here. I think 5 o'clock where you're watching, Rohan, 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
You said
5:30.
5 o'clock?
5:30.
Yeah.
5:30 for me.
5:30.
Yeah, for us. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still out on the West Coast, so what?
Oh,
What time would that be?
3:30.
3:30.
3:30
Yeah.
game. So that's it for today's episode. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Thank you, David, for jumping on with us. I really appreciate you coming in and just talking ball. If you are not, make sure you subscribe to both channels. We got Rohan's channel. We also got the Clutch Gene Sports channel. Make sure you subscribe to both channels. David, someone did want your hat in the chat. I don't know who. Let me go to. I know I have it pinned. So if they want to message you on Twitter, Showboat278. David, where did you get your hat? If you're still in the chat,
eBay, baby.
David just said it was eBay. So make sure you guys go on Twitter. Make sure you guys subscribe to or not subscribe. Make sure you guys follow my boy David at Backcountry Fam. Make sure you guys are following at Rohan Chakarar. How do you say it, Rohan? I don't know. I can never say your last name.
Chakravarti.
Okay, but like right now, how is right there? Like your at name.
Oh, at Rohan Chakrav.
Okay, I see. Like I would have tried to say your full last name instead, but make sure you guys are following Rohan. Make sure you guys go hit that like button, that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell for every time we're about to go live. We appreciate everyone for tuning in today. Thank you.